Oh yeah, late night study session. I like this song.
And I keep rolling up.
You might want to grab your pen and paper because
And I keep rolling up.
we'll talk about a
We
lot
blow
of
it
things.
down. We blow it up. Hot air in me. We going.
It's not gonna be a long session, and every time I say that, that means it's gonna be a long session. No, it's not gonna be that long. I'm gonna do. This is more of an abstract study session, meaning it's gonna be short, concise, and spirit moving. I'm going to put a more ordered, organized version of the study session on my podcast, Normal LOL. That's Normal LOL. You can check that out now, or afterwards, rather. But this particular study session, lecture, abstract lecture, is going to be about the partial origins of mental illness as it relates to Sumeria, Babylon, Assyria, which is really interesting because, like, Sumeria and Babylon, they just don't get enough attention to me. I mean, I understand why, because, Kemet and Cush, that's just where it all comes together as far as the peak of civilization and the enormous magical things that they did, regarding those pyramids, among other things. So I get it. Nevertheless, Sumeria and Babylon, I feel is just untouchable also because they was doing a lot of stuff over there, right? A lot of stuff in that region of Africa. But one of the reasons why I want to just really touch on the partial origins. Let me tell you why I say partial origins also. It's because we don't have enough documentation of what was going on prior to Sumeria, Babylon, Assyria, Kemet, Cush, other parts of Africa or Asia. A lot of mythology, arguably even the stuff I'm discussing regarding Sumeria, Babylon, and other ancient cultures. There's a lot of mythology in that too. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. And a lot of stuff is theoretic, and open to interpretation. Now you have other stuff that was going on prior to Sumeria, Babylon, Kemet and Cush, and again that's also centered around a lot of mythology too, and that's Atlantis, Pangea, Lemuria, all those things. I'm sure some of that is factual. I haven't done enough research on all that stuff to know what's actually a fact and what's not. Nevertheless, when you're talking about humans writing things or whatever, species scribbling on whatever, you got to take that with a grain of salt too, as I believe everything is a truth and a half-truth. But, there's no documentation on the concept of mental illness or what they might have called melancholy, epilepsy, different things like that as far as Atlantis or Lemuria or Pangea, whatever is concerned. So you have to start at Kemet, Cush, Sumeria, Babylon, Assyria. Excuse me. Another question, I've been asked as I've been doing research. I call myself an indigenous mental spiritual health historian. Been doing research on ancient cultures and mental health for a long time, since 2014, 2015. And sometimes people ask me, why is this so important? Like, how's this going to help me with what I'm going through today as far as a modern, present moment point of view of where to begin to observe whatever condition one might have as it pertains to altered states or a mood disorder. And my response is always the same. It's all about controlling the narrative. And it's also about digging deep, right? Digging real deep into, your spirit and consciousness as it pertains to what's going on inside your world. You know, a lot of times, you know, we think it's about the surface of everything, and we don't realize that it's so much bigger, so much deeper. It's embedded in our genetics and in our DNA as it pertains to our ancestors and the trauma that they went through. That's why I also always talk about, you know, a few different type of therapies. You know, we often run to the modern westernized psychiatrists, and I'm not taking shots. Maybe I am. That's not the end all be all. You know, you have ancestral trauma healing, you know. Got, you know, different go-go's in different parts of the world that handle stuff like that, among many other indigenous healers. You have body trauma healing. You have intergenerational trauma healing. And then you have, what's going on in the present moment. That's critical. That's very important too. But when you start talking about what we label as depression or anxiety and stuff like that, you got to take the root. You got to take that at heart and into high consideration, because everything I'm about when I'm talking about, you know, mental health and controlling the narrative, it pertains to mental health and native indigenous medical practices. It pertains to stolen land. It pertains to a loss of native indigenous tongue. It pertains to indigenous and native aspects of how we communicate with one another, how we partner with one another, whether it pertains to friendships, companionships, love, family, community, tribes. Like, all those things are important. So that's why I like going back to the ancients, and I like studying, you know, ancient ancestors, whether it's back in 5000 BC or whether it's 1500 AD. You know, all these things are critical and important, because once we gather all this information, you can then, with a right mind at an appropriate center point, you can begin to diagnose yourself and not let others diagnose you based upon modern westernized techniques of medical practices. And although some of those things are useful today, more things are useful as it pertains to our ancestors. So let's get started. So I'm going to center this around three things as it pertains to Sumeria. We're starting with the partial origins of the concept of mental illness. Again, the partial origins of the concepts of mental illness. And we're starting with Sumeria, Babylon, and Assyria. And the three things you got to take into consideration is wind, hands, and eyes. Or you can say the hands of Shamash, the hands of Ishtar. Those are gods or divine principles of different parts of nature. When you talk about the eye, you got the eye, the evil eye, the eye of Heru. The evil eye is is something that goes back to Sumeria and Babylon. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're going to kind of just, again, this is going to be short. We're going to tie it in loosely to the Anunnaki, Enlil in particular. Enlil, who was a weather, a sky god. He was in charge of the sky for real. If anything was going to be going on in the sky, as it pertains to pestilence, famine, and whatever else, that's Enlil's wheelhouse. Not to necessarily be looked at as a literal thing. Again, a lot of this is mythology, but you're going to see some interesting similarities with Enlil as it pertains to some things that he was known for doing. As I tie that into wind, hands, and the evil eye. And from that point, you'll also see how it ties into today, because what a lot of people fail to realize is, let me see if I can delete this right quick. Oh, I can't delete it. A lot of people fail to realize is what's going on today was going on yesterday, and what's going on yesterday, what was going on yesterday was going on 100 years ago. What was going on 100 years ago was going on 500 years ago. Why? Because time, according to our ancients, is cyclical, not linear. We move by a linear time. And that could be attributed to, I'm sure, a number of people. Maybe the Romans, possibly the Greeks also. It's neither here nor there. When you talk about cyclical nature, that means that ain't nothing new under the sun. It's happened before. You're moving in a circle. At this point, it's just as close to that point. Today is yesterday. So yeah. So let's start with the hands. Let's start with the hands. So in ancient Sumeria, in particular, Babylonians, different accounts, as it pertains to the concept of mental illness, they charged it with the hands of a certain deity. Why was it hands? Because hands are used to control and manipulate. So when something was going on, as whether it was in the realm of epilepsy or melancholy or whatever the case may be, you disrespected a god in particular, and you need to make amends with that god. And there's different things that they would do to make amends. They would use amulets and different stones and gems and incantations and figurines and bury things and in the ground in certain corners in this area, whatever. It might sound crazy now, but that's what it was, back in the day. But I want to start by reading some things that I found very interesting. Came across some really good stuff today that I wanted to really express, so you kind of have an idea of the difference between modern Western mental health practices and ancient Eastern and ancient Western mental health practices. So let's start with this. This is coming out of the NIH.gov, which is usually pretty good, pretty legit application to look at. NIH's National Library of Medicine. And this is depression and anxiety in Babylon. So although the Babylonians had no understanding of brain or psychological function, they were remarkably observant describers of many medical disorders and behaviors which we see today, and for which they had their own interpretations and treatments. Let's just stop right there. What did I just say? I said everything I do is to get you, not me. I don't want to control your narrative. To get you to control your narrative, and figure out how you want to identify with what's going on in your reality as it pertains to altered states or mood disorders. And let me take it a step further. Just a quick sidebar as I get deeper into this stuff. Why am I able to speak on this? Because I've dealt with psychosis. Just real quick, back in 2013, I dealt with severe psychosis, and that's centered around schizophrenia, dissociative identity disorder, depersonalization, derealization, panic attacks, depression. Between 2013, mid-2013, all the way to 2015, it was extremely intense. And keeping it real short, not to get too deep into that's a whole other story for another day. As I would get stronger, part of me getting stronger was the ability to pivot and make a decision to choose how I wanted to view what it was that I was going through. And it involved me relying on spirit, relying on faith, relying on my connection to my ancestors, my connection to nature, and enormously as I would get stronger and go beyond that point of healing, and not necessarily healing from the perspective of eliminating everything, but managing, because a lot of times when we deal with things that are that intense, you don't ever get rid of it. You just, you learn how to do maintenance on it and stuff like that. But even beyond that was studying. I did a lot of studying. I wanted to know what in the hell, what could I use to identify with how I felt, what was going on, and what could I use to best describe it. And I wanted to read about, what indigenous ancient people were doing and how they perceived these things, and that helped out tremendously. So now, going back to what I was talking about, you have two Babylonian empires. Best known is the biblical or Neo-Babylonian Empire from 626 to 539 BC. However, the great corpus of Babylonian medical texts we have studied are associated with the first Babylonian Empire initiated by King Hammurabi circa 1792. 1792 is basically when you start seeing a lot of different things coming out of Sumeria and Babylon. Butterfly. Hey, butterfly. So now, this is what I really want you to really digest. The concept of depression, either as a symptom or as a clinical entity, would not have been known to the Babylonians. I'm going to say that one more time. The concept of depression, either as a symptom or as a clinical entity, would not have been known to the Babylonians. Babylonian accounts of mental illness are notable for their objectivity and the absence of subjective feelings and thoughts. Indeed, the concept of depression as a clinical diagnosis is relatively new in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. I just posted that the other day. If you look at the etymology, the origins of words, you'll see that these words did not exist until much, recently. I want to read that one more time. Indeed, the concept of depression as a clinical diagnosis is relatively new in the 19th and early 20th centuries, when the word depression was substituted for the Greek word melancholia, as theories about black bile were no longer thought to be relevant. In the Babylonian language, there is a noun, asustu, which is an associated verb, such as asasu, which is generally understood to mean distress, which might perhaps include depression, but one cannot be certain about the exact meaning in a given instance. And this is pretty interesting. Some medical texts include the term, I'm not going to say that term because I don't know how to say these words, all of them. I'll try to say it, zikarudu, a Sumerian loan word meaning literally a cutting off or shortening of life. This has been interpreted to mean suicide, attempted suicide, or suicidal tendencies, which, if correct, could imply depression in some instances. The Babylonians did recognize and describe fear, either as pulutu or as a verb. I cannot say that word. He is constantly afraid. This may be subtly different from another literal meaning, breaking of the mind, and interpreted here either as nervous breakdown or possibly panic attacks. So yeah, you see like how, how deep this goes. They were not using any of the medical practices that are used today. Even, the concept of sitting down with somebody in particular was that was really sacred. They had sleep temples And in these sleep temples, you had different high priests that had that had studied, how to do different things as it pertains to the bending of the mind and stuff like that. They studied those things all, their entire life, and were held highly accountable for anything that they did. So if you went to a certain high priest, if you were allowed to, because I don't even know if the common person could go to a high priest in a sleep temple. Maybe they could, but it wasn't for everybody. So the concept of going to a therapist today is somewhat similar to sleep temples, but it's also a lot different. And just to take it a step further, when sitting down with somebody, maybe not as much today, because I think that from a conscious point of view, we've kind of have begun to wake up as it pertains to who it is that we should be discussing things with, as it pertains to mind, mood disorders, and altered states, because you can't talk to everybody about this stuff. Not to mention, from a decolonial point of view and from an indoctrination point of view, why are you talking to a certain type of therapists that don't understand who you are, where you come from anyways? It doesn't make any sense, right? So, but yeah, like these concepts, these words, they don't even show up at all in those times. I'm gonna go ahead and read some of this too. It is uncertain whether the clinical description in the text below referred originally to a single case involving one head of the household, or in the usual Babylonian medical tradition presents the complete clinical picture derived from observing many examples. Yeah. Here, the construction and burial of two figurines or images are designed to break the oath or hold of the offended personal god and goddess. The appeal is to a higher deity, Shamash, for example, the sun god and god of justice. So that'll be a good way to segue into the hands. Again, that's just a beginner. And again, like I said, this is just an abstract study session, kind of going all over the place. I'm going to put a more organized study session on my podcast, Normal LOL, in a couple days. So that's the beginning point of how partially things originate regarding the concept of mental illness in Sumeria and Babylon. So now let's talk about the hands. What are the hands? I kind of talked to you a little bit about what the hands are a little earlier, and I'll go back over that again. They called it the hands because, again, the hands are able to control and manipulate. So when something was going on inside the spirit and the mind as it pertains to melancholy or epilepsy or seizures or different shouting moments or whatnot, they attributed it to a god in particular possessing or manipulating somebody to behave a certain way. In Akkadian text, and Akkadians basically in alignment with Sumeria, Assyria, and Babylon. In Akkadian text, human or divine agency is often introduced by using a phrase involving the word Kwatu or Watu, which is hand, whereas Watu is used with various prepositions or pronouns in idiomatic expressions that indicate authority, possession, or control, which is basically what I said. I just said it in a more elementary way. The simple phrase Wat plus personal divine name is almost exclusively, that's my dog, exclusively used to designate agency. Perhaps best known is the phrase hand of a personal name. So it'd be hand of Ishtar, hand of Shamash, hand of Enlil, whatever god in particular that was to show up, based upon what was going on regarding that particular person. The hand of the deity in so-and-so appears abundantly in Mesopotamian scholarly texts, most notably in medical diagnostic text. like, for example, the BAM 234, which is a Babylonian medical diagnostic 234, where the phrase is used to indicate the divine causal agent of an illness. It is less well known that Wat plus DN appears in various text genres, especially in divinatory texts. Let's go a little further. Let's go to casual agents of illness and disease in medical texts in Mesopotamia. The common usage of the phrase Wat plus DN in medical diagnostic texts reflects the Mesopotamian etymological concept of disease and illness. In the holistic medical conception prevalent in much of ancient Near East, direct contact with the disease was necessary in order for a person to fall sick, and Mesopotamians believed this contact to be most often caused by deities or demons, but also ghosts, and occasionally witchcraft by fellow humans. Many phrases were used to describe the touching, hitting, or striking of the affected person by a god, but none was used as frequently as Watts plus whatever god, hand of God. A few examples from the Diagnostic Handbook, the series of diagnostic entries. Let me see if they have certain gods here that they would say the hands of. I saw a few of them, but there's quite a few deities. Let me read this part right here. The phrase hand of deity so-and-so was so common that already early on the hands of certain deities were associated with specific sets of symptoms and probably even whole syndromes. Some of them developed into true disease names. These names I cannot read. I'm not even going to try to read these names. Thus, it starts with an S. Hand of God disease, hand of goddess disease, and hand of a ghost disease are attested. But these remained exceptions. The vast majority of diseases have names of a different type and were connected with various but always specific deities. At the end of Tablet 33 of the Diagnostic Handbook appears a list in which diseases and certain syndromes are correlated with casual agents. The disease Samanu with the hand of Gula, with Ninurta and Samas. Yeah, they had a lot of names for different deities and different illnesses. I'm not going to go too much deeper into the hands, but I will go more in detail on my podcast episode. But that's just to give you an idea of like what it meant to be possessed by something, you know, the hands of, like today it would be for indigenous people of color, be the hands of Jesus. You know what I'm saying? The hands of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, I guess. Yeah. But keeping it all the way 100, these things are important, like I said, because again, knowing that there's other concepts allows you to control the narrative of how you view whatever it is that may be going on in your reality. It doesn't have to be something as extreme as schizophrenia, depersonalization, dissociative identity disorder, bipolar, multiple personality disorder. It doesn't be nothing that extreme. It could be just, not just, I want to say it, simplify it, like depression is that simple, because it's not. And there's different levels of depression, by the way, also. But it could be something just not as extreme, and still you need to control that narrative of what's going on and how it relates to what you might be stripping, you know. As you do a lot of eliminating and stripping and decolonizing, stuff like that, you start to learn like different things. For example, that you exist in this colonized capitalistic system, and what if that's the problem, right? You know, like it's again, it goes deeper than the surface, you know. So it's like sometimes people just think that's what's going on every day in their world, you know, as it pertains to their job, as it pertains to their family and friends, and that's a piece of it. That's just a small piece of the puzzle, but it's just touching the surface. You got to dig deeper, and what's deeper is the disconnect from a system that's more natural for you, a habitat, an environment that's more conducive and natural with how you need to exist. You need to, a way you need to be living. So that's why it's important to control the narrative. Let's go to. I wonder if I can share my pictures. Let me see if I can. I think I can. Hold on a second. I think I can. Yeah, I do. Yeah. So let's go to this right here. So now we'll go to the eye. Again, all these things run parallel with one another. You have the hands of, you have the evil eyes. The evil eye goes all the way back to Samaria and Mesopotamia also. Let me see if I can pull this up. The evil eye. Hold on one second. The evil eye of Sumerian deities. Okay. So I just came across this recently. I was really fascinated that I would be able to cross paths with this because the symbol of the eye is one of the most renowned symbols in the world, maybe even the universe, with the most important, the most renowned eye being the eye of Heru, or the eye of Horus. That's the eye you see with the usually I think it's the right eye, if I'm correct. People got it tattooed on their bodies. It's everywhere. You know what I'm saying? But it symbolized so many things, and the eye in general has symbolized so many things in all cultures. You have another popular eye in various indigenous native cultures in the West, where it's an open palm and the hand is and the eye is in the middle of the hand. So the eye symbolized a lot of things. In particular, as far as the evil eye of Sumerian deities, it symbolized witchcraft. It symbolized possession. I think more often you'll see that the evil eye was a symbol of like pestilence or famine. If a certain deity in particular was piercing its gaze at you or at your land or at your house or whatever, from a mythical point of view or symbolic point of view, something was going to happen in your household. Something was going to happen on your land, in your community, in your tribe, whatever, and it wasn't going to be pretty. So, you had to do certain things to please these deities because you didn't want the evil eye on you. Take it a step further, and again, I'll go into detail on my podcast. The eye crosses so many eras, so many centuries, decades. You have curanderismo, it's curanderos, which are basically Hispanic healers, and they talk about the evil eye, the susto. I think it's called susto, if I'm correct. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's called susto, which was I think that was actually a word regarding the hands. I think it was a susto or a susta, but again, it's the eye is on you. Let me do some reading right quick. Yeah. The evil eye is a widespread folk concept that the glance of certain people, gods, animals, and mythological figures can cause injury, illness, or death. It is millennia old, and due to its long history of existence, is one of the most influential and most complex belief systems in the world. This particular individual who writes this, and this is coming out of, let me see if I like to attribute this to. This is coming out of Asian and African Studies, Department of Biblical and Ancient Studies, University of South Africa, Pretoria, sav.sk/journals. There's a lot going on in that web address, but that's where it's coming from. This person suggests that the evil eye originated in the ancient Near Eastern and Circum-Mediterranean area, where it is first encountered in the Sumerian literary record in the 3rd millennium BCE. Mesopotamian art predating the Sumerian incantations against the evil eye suggests that the belief extends to periods of prehistory. It was also a central belief in ancient Egypt, where the myth of Horus, Heru, just got done talking about that. Heru's restored eye served as a cultural explanation for the efficacy of the ubiquitous evil eye amulets. The belief also pervaded the poetry, drama, literature, and art of ancient Greece and Rome. It is even encountered throughout the Christian Bible. You know, that's interesting because I don't remember where the eye is in the Bible and alluded to in the Quran. I have never read the Quran. Yeah, that's interesting. I had to think about that. I don't remember seeing, but seeing is that the Old Testament is a compilation of old ancient text, whether it's the pyramid text or the coffin text or the Enuma Elish. I can't imagine that the eye isn't somewhere in there, but I have to do more research on that. Among Muslims, Christians, and Jews, the evil eye is usually inextricably linked with envy, although the biblical writings also link it with miserliness and begrudging spirit and lack of generosity. I guess they just don't use I, they just use those words, I guess. Surprisingly, some cultures even associate it with positive states of mind such as admiration and love. That is true. In pre-scientific societies where the relationship between bacterial and viral causes of illnesses was unknown, traditional healers were quick to ascribe ailments and misfortune in general to supernatural cases. Let's go down a little further. Their literature testifies to the fantastical powers that were ascribed to the organ of vision, which through the millennia seemed to retain mysterious qualities. This individual suggests that the evil eye beliefs are based on the extramission theory of vision, which in turn derives from the sense of being stared at. I think I'll stop right there because it's just a lot of mumbo jumbo and a lot of words. But I'll keep it short. And like I said, I'll get more detailed on it at another point in time. But one of the reasons why I wanted to bring that up, do I want to read that? Let me read this part right quick. This theory of the devastating effect of the gaze in terms of extramission theory had been described in detail by ancient philosophers such as Plato, Euclid, and Ptolemy. However, it is also commonly encountered in the literature of ancient Mesopotamia, where the eyes of gods, supernatural beings, animals, and humans were believed to cause illness, death, and damage on a large scale. Unfortunately, however, most research on the evil eye in Mesopotamia has not ventured beyond incantation literature, where the gaze, the negative evil gaze, is specifically mentioned. Yeah. So basically, and as I've already read through most of that already, basically just saying that a lot of information regarding the evil eye is centered on various tablets and various incantations. Because what you'll see in a lot of these tablets are magical rites, rituals, and spells in order to rid yourself of something. So you have a lot of various different incantations for ridding different ailments and illnesses. And in this particular literature right here that I'm reading, as I'll go further in later on, there's 3 incantations in particular, and I know 2 of the incantations are to make it to where the evil eye doesn't cause any disasters like hurricanes, tornadoes, or whatever, famine, pestilence, any type of disasters on your land or whatnot. I don't know about the incantations to rid yourself of the evil eye as it pertains to melancholy or epilepsy and stuff like that. But I will say one thing is pretty interesting. There's this, if you think about the Anunnaki, Anunnaki are the, some of the original gods that ever existed, deities. From a mythological point of view, divine principles of nature that existed in ancient times. You have a particular god by the name of Enlil. Enlil was a major god, Enlil, Enki, Anu, among many others, but those two in particular were major gods. And Enlil in particular was a major sky god. He was the weather and sky god, lord of the wind, lord of the storms. He wasn't nothing to play with. The thing about Enlil, and if you go through the Enuma Elish, you'll see that he had he played a big role in manipulation, dominance, and control. So about a year and a half ago, I was watching this video with Billy Carson, and the title of the video, you can watch it yourself, is really good actually. As he studies a lot of this stuff, and that's not my way of saying you should trust everything he says. You got to read for yourself always. But there's a YouTube video called "What Is Enlil's All-Seeing Eye" by Billy Carson, and I'll let you hear some of this right quick, and then I'll kind of take it from there. But you can listen to some of this. Hopefully, you can hear it.
So you see, when you take the spiritual,
Let me turn the volume up a little bit. Now, here we go.
magical sky daddy wizard with a magic wand out of the picture and analyze it from a technological standpoint, you begin to realize that we're talking about a guy who had technology. This is how he knew about this. The Sumerian tablets say he had something called the Tablets of Destiny. And these Tablets of Destiny would have communication capability. They would have capability of seeing images on the screen that let him see things happening on the planet. He can even transmit information back to his home world through these Tablets of Destiny. And he had control of some type of weapon through these Tablets of Destiny, which is why people tried to steal them. And they actually got stolen a few times. And it was said whoever had control of the Tablets of Destiny had literally control of everything in this galaxy. Pretty interesting. And so he had the Tablets of Destiny as well. These crystal tablets that can display all this information.
So we'll stop right there, and let me see if I can. I don't know how to get rid of this. Oh, stop sharing. Yeah. So we'll stop right there. The Tablets of Destiny is something I'm still combing through. It's a lot to comb through. Also, keep in mind that the Tablets of Destiny is not considered fully real. But again, you can take that with a grain of salt. I mean, Atlantis is considered highly mythical also, but yet there's a lot of information on it. There's just not again, you just got to take it with a grain of salt. Everything is a truth and a half truth. Personally, I believe the Tablets of Destinies is real because you can see layers of it in like the Emerald Tablet, or if you ever get the opportunity to read upon the laws of Jehudi or the laws of Thoth or whatever, you'll see different things that are also intertwined in the Tablets of Destinies. So that tells me, and this is me just kind of being theoretic about it all, that tells me that Jehudi, Thoth, I think also at some point his name was Marduk, and Marduk is a part of the Enuma Elish also. There's two Marduks, and I think in particular he was one of the Marduks that left Sumeria and went to Kemet, Egypt, and ruled over there. Obviously, Jehudi knew about the Tablets of Destinies because, a lot of his lingo comes out of that. Apparently, the tablets of destinies is a pretty big deal. But circling back around to what Billy Carson is saying and why I think that it was so critical and how to look at things when you start talking about the hands of something, or when you start talking about the evil eye. Well, you can see how someone having this superior dominance over technology and the ability to be omnipotent, to be anywhere and everywhere at any given point in time. Well, now think about how somebody might be, going through a certain fit of rage, or what we like to call schizophrenia, and feeling like they're possessed or whatever. My theory is that these deities or species of whatever that they could possess people, and they did, part of the reading of the Enuma Elish and these different Sumerian tablets is that humans were genetically developed and coded from some of these extraterrestrial type of species or deities or whatever. The reason why they were called deities is because they came out the sky. So anything comes out the sky, you're going to, not know any better, you're probably going to call it a god of some sort. But they were just, a species of some sort. Presuming that all that is true, when you start thinking about the hands controlling and manipulating, you start thinking about the evil eye, whatever, it makes sense that a certain amount of people would think that when they're going through something, that they're being possessed by something in particular. Something's causing me to do this or whatever. And in order for me to get back to a stable place in mind and spirit, you have to make an offering or do an incantation of some sorts. Now, am I implying that anybody going through fits of rage today, dealing with altered states or melancholia, depression, whatever, that you're being possessed by a deity in particular? My response to that is I don't know. Now, as someone who has dealt with extreme bouts of psychosis in the past or whatever, possession is a part of that. And thankfully, I was able to control the narrative of what possession felt like to me. I had the strength and the ability to control the narrative and position myself in such a way to make it to where I was making it concrete that when I was feeling possessed, it was a good thing, and I made it a positive thing, as opposed to going other direction. And the other direction is something evil is possessing me and it's causing me to do something in particular that I don't want to do. And that showed up too, but that's a whole nother story. The point is, I know what it feels like to go through something that intense and feel like you're possessed by something that's good or bad. And it's not far-fetched. It's not far-fetched to say that possession goes on today and something can be possessing somebody, whether it's I wouldn't call it a deity, but I think at this point, stage in the journey, we all believe that there are other species beyond us, around us, whether far or near. And it's not far-fetched to believe that someone can be possessed by something in the wind or something from an evil eye point of view. Another reason why it's not far-fetched, and that I believe I have a sound theory on a lot of this stuff as it pertains to the concepts of mental illness, or partially originating in this particular region as it pertains to an eye, is because look at what's going on today. Today, at the present moment, is a perfect example of something that reflects what was going on back then, because we live in a cyclical time pattern. What goes around comes around. What goes around comes around. If you do not look at time from a linear point of view, if you look at it from a cyclical point of view, what's going on today is an imitation of what was going on back then. I know you're probably like, what are you talking about? What's going on today? I'm talking about AI. Look at today's technology. I wouldn't say today's technology is advanced as their technology from back in the day, as far as Kemet, Kush, Sumeria, the Akkadians, all them. They had superior technology. Debatably so, the technology that we have today comes from them. How it comes from them, I'm not gonna get into all that. But when you start talking about AI, for example, the all-seeing eye, AI is I would say is the European God that they have always wanted, because they could never communicate and relate to the natural God that we as indigenous people observe. So they was like, we guys gotta create our own God. And I believe AI is their God, and AI is everywhere. AI is omnipotent. AI can see everything, as far as surveillance is concerned, as far as all these things we use, phones, computers, TVs, everything. It's everywhere. It is the all-seeing eye. AI is today's evil eye, And let's be clear, like all these things like imitate, just like AI imitates God from an ancient point of view. Virtual reality and augmented reality, which is an altered state, is an imitation of plant medicine, DMT, shrooms, edibles, whatever you want to call it. Like, again, all these things are imitations. Reincarnation, what would be the imitation of that today? The imitation of reincarnation would be the transfer of consciousness. I'm pretty sure they can probably do it already, and I don't know how common it will be, but at some point you will probably have the option, or your children will have the option of, do you want to die, or do you want to just transfer your consciousness to another vessel or whatever? Now, whether you agree or disagree with that is a whole nother topic of conversation, but the truth is that is what's happening. That is going to happen. The transfer of consciousness is reincarnation. So you see all these things already happening, and when you start thinking about chips going in, people are going to have chips in their mind so that they can, function. What's the word I'm looking for? I try to articulate that. So they can be one. So they can be one with machines, one with technology. Just like we almost are one with technology because we're so connected to our phones. But imagine 50 years from now, all these quote unquote humans or cyborgs or whatever have these things in their mind so they can interact, with technology in their mind. And I'm pretty sure possession is going to happen. So you're going to have people talking about they feel possessed. They feel like something's in their mind. And what does that sound like? It sounds like yesterday. It sounds like thousands and thousands of years ago when people were complaining. I won't say complaining, but people were describing something interfering in their space, in their vortex, in their spirit, in their mind. Today's AI is the AI from back in the day. So it's crazy, man. But that's how time rolls. Time rolls in a cyclical nature. Let me share one more. I'm gonna share a few more things. Lastly, you talk about the wind. Now this is really important because again, the wind, Feng Shi, Tao, Rulung, Numa, Qi, that all runs parallel to the evil eye and parallel to the hands. Let me show you why it runs parallel. I'm going to choose something different. Let's choose this. Now, have you ever heard that before? Our grandparents used that to catch the wind. And even if your grandparents didn't say that, they use that, as soon as the fall hits and the winter hits, everybody, all the elders used to be like, the wind is going to carry something. The wind carries, the air carries something, diseases, all types of things. So the wind is something that runs parallel with evil eye and hands also. Again, going back to ancient times, and like I said, it's amazing. We still use these things today. Let me share one more thing. The wind, to catch the wind, also known as malignant forces of spirits. All these things run hand in hand with one another. And that's why, let me stop sharing that. That's why I think it's so important to understand the origins, or some of the partial origins of these concepts, because just relying on modern Western medical practices to give you a truth of who you are and why you behave a certain way and why you feel a certain way is no good. It's at this point, it's just, that's old news. You know what I'm saying? And I hadn't even started. I haven't even begun. I'll get into that in a few weeks, as far as the origins of these words. Like you have diagnostic, scholastic, DSM. I forgot what the M stands for at the present moment. But you got 5 of them, or 6. I think it's 5 or 6. And it's just an array. It's like, I think it's 600 something labels or whatever. And these labels define certain aspects of the spirit and mind as it pertains to illness, as it pertains to altered states or mood disorders or whatever. And when you start looking at the origins of where the DSM starts, Diagnostic Scholastic Manual, when you start looking at the origins of where the DSM starts or whatever, you're gonna really not be shocked that the origins has nothing to do with you. And when I say you, I'm talking about you as an indigenous person of complexion, as a sun god, sun goddess. These people don't look like you. I think it's called the original 9 or something like that. I can't remember. Just a whole bunch of white people, just old white men, just making up all these words. The APA. What's the other organization? The APA. I can't remember all the organizations right now. Oh, the WHO organization, World Health Organization. All those organizations start around the same time in the 1940s, 1950s. And that's where you basically have all these old white people coming up with all these different things to tell you what's wrong with you. It's crazy. It don't make no sense, right? And it goes back even further than that. But what's crazy, though, is that them doing all this stuff, in addition to creating different types of medicines to put people on. Yeah, like in 1792, this guy named Pinel, I can't remember what his name, Ernest Pinel, something like that, where he talks about, the best way to cure, various altered states and mood disorders is with exercise and sunlight and good diet habits or whatever, which he kind of took a page out of the book for the Greeks, and the Greeks took pages out of the books of the Egyptians. They were on to something well, but why those medical practices? Why did they exist? Why were they so sufficient that modern Western medical practitioners would just strip it just to make their own way of seeing things? But I get it too, from a civilization point of view. Every civilization wants to tattoo their name on whatever because they want to make themselves, seem like they are the best to ever do it. And Europeans failed miserably at that. Miserably. Anyways, so that is your abstract study session. Thanks, Butterfly, for hanging out with me. Abstract study session on the partial origins of the concepts of mental illness as it pertains to Sumeria, Babylon, and Assyria. And I will let you know when I post it on the podcast momentarily. But following this, I will post, I think I got about 2 or 3 videos regarding the the BAM, the Babylon Medical Diagnostic for Babylon. I post 2 videos on that. I post a video on the winds, so you can kind of check some of that out. And I will post a video on the hands of Ishtar, or the hands of Shamash, and that will kind of, sum that up basically. But yeah, I'll do another little light abstract lecture in a few days, sometime next weekend. See you soon. Peace, butterfly. Peace. Love you.